Okay, today's daf is Ayin Tet in Yoma. We're going to start at the very bottom of Ayin Chet Amud Bet, the very last line. Ha'ochel kechotevet hagasa. So it said that if a person eats the amount of food of a large date, that's the volume that we measure to determine how much food a person is not allowed to eat, or if a person eats it, they would be in violation of Yom Kippur. It's the size of a large date. So Ba'irav Papa asked the following question. Kechotevet she'amru begar'inata, or below gar'inata. When it says that you can't eat a kotevet, you can't eat a date, okay, so is that including the pit or not including the pit? Now there's a problem with this question. What's the problem with this question? The Mishnah itself says, what does the Mishnah itself say at the very beginning of this parak? On Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Bet, it says, Ha'ochel kechotevet agasa kamoa v'chagar'inata. It says it and its seed, its pit. So how can you ask whether you need the pit or not? How can you ask whether you need the pit or not? It's already in the Mishnah. So this is a problem. So Rashi says on the side here, that the fact that it says in our Mishnah that it includes the pit. He's asking, what does it mean? Or maybe what he means to say, maybe what the Mishnah is saying is either the date or the pit, one or the other. Okay? Well, no, meaning the size. We're not saying, you didn't actually eat the pit, but the question is the amount of food that you're not allowed to eat. So, if you look at the Tosafot here, he says this way that Rashi frames the question is not very convincing. Why not? Because if eating the pit, even eating the volume of the pit of a date, is enough food to eat to violate Yom Kippur, then eating the size of the date itself is certainly enough because the date is larger. So why would the Mishnah tell you either 50% or 100%? Well, it doesn't make any sense that way. So Tosafot has a different interpretation of the. He gives two interpretations of the question.
Rabbi, how come Tosafot is so big?
Whenever he goes into a complicated question, it's just longer. So it depends. Sometimes. Yes, sometimes he gets into. Sometimes very short.
Sometimes no.
Yeah.
The Gemara, it's 2 lines.
Sometimes there's a whole long discussion about. Usually, what Tosafot is doing is comparing different sugyot. Oh, what about in Brachot it says this, but what about in this other Masechet it says something else? So he's comparing and contrasting them, and he comes up, of course, with sometimes the conversation is very complex. So he says, "V'nirali lefarish." Tosafot says that what he means is what was the issue here? That the question is, when we talk about, when it says in the Mishnah that the amount is a kotevet, a date, and the pit, does it mean the kotevet in its natural state and another pit? In other words, is it a kotevet, it's a date plus another pit? Or does it mean just the original date and its pit? So the way Tosafot says, when it says here, kechotevet begar'inata o below gar'inata, means, do you have to add even more? In other words, if you have the size of a large date, do you have to add even another amount of the pit to make the complete amount? In other words, we're determining here the volume of food that you eat on Yom Kippur that's a violation. Is it just the date? Or when the Mishnah says, kamoa v'chagar'inata, it's adding even more. Not only the date, but also another pit in addition, or not?
Fill up the date with the piece of
or anything, right? Or the other interpretation Tosafot gives is maybe what it means is that the airspace inside the date, does that count? In other words, do you have to squish it so that it's just the date and the pit? Or is it the date in its natural state has some air inside? So do we look at the volume as it is now, or do we have to squish it so that we're not including the airspace inside to make the measurement? That would actually be a stricter measurement, because if you squish the date, what you're going to have is an even smaller volume. And if that's the volume of food you're not allowed to eat, that's even stricter. So anyway, that one of these 3 possibilities is suggested by Rashi and Tosafot in terms of understanding what Rav Papa was asking, because the Mishnah itself seems to say that we need the pit. We need to include the pit. So what's going on here? In any case, Rav Ashi asked another question. Etzem kisora beklipata below klipata. When we say that the amount of bone that transmits tum'ah has to be the size of a barley corn, does that mean a barley corn with its skin? In other words, with its klipa? Or does it mean without the skin, without the covering? Right? Without the shell, the covering. So, he also asked, bilaha or bivesha? Did it mean a dry barley corn or a moist one? A moist one, of course, will be a little bit larger because it'll have the moisture making it puff up a little bit more. So when we use these measurements, sometimes it's unclear exactly what the parameters are. Rav Ashilo mi bayale had Rav Papa gasa itmar. Kol kama de gasa. That Rav Ashi didn't have the problem that Rav Papa asked. Because Rav Papa was concerned with the question of the date. Rav Ashi didn't wonder about the date. He said, whatever's the largest is what it means, because it says gasa. Whatever the largest is what it means. And Rav Papa lo mibaya lehad Rav Ashi, and Rav Papa did not ask about Rav Ashi's question about the bone, because lacha shibolet mikre shelo beklipata ushla mikre, because Rav Papa said that when you're dealing with barley, the term seora specifically means a dry one with its shell. It doesn't mean one without the shell, because one without the shell is called ushla, and it doesn't mean one that is moist, because one that's moist is called shibolet. So therefore, when the Gemara or when the Talmud speaks of etzem kiseora, that the bone the size of a barley corn, it means that the barley corn is a dry barley corn in its shell. And when it talks about, according to Rav Ashi, when it talks about a date, he doesn't have any question about what that means. It means whatever the largest size is, a date with its pit inside, and the airspace, according to the second opinion of Tosafot, or a date with the pit inside, whatever the largest date is that we can find, that's going to be, with the whole package, that's what it's going to be according to Rav Ashi. Amar Rav Yehuda says, or actually it should say according to the side, Amar Rabba, Amar Rav Yehuda. That this large date that we're talking about here is larger than an egg. It's a very large date. That the rabbis had a tradition that eating this amount of food, the amount of food of a large date, is what's going to settle a person. In other words, miyatvad date means that it makes him feel satisfied. Eating a small amount of food, you're not allowed to do that on Yom Kippur either, but it doesn't give you satisfaction. It has to be an amount that satisfies, and that amount is the amount of a large date. It's even bigger than an egg. Meiteve, there is an objection to this. There was a situation, this is talking about Sukkot, that they brought to Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai a tavshil, a cooked dish to taste. And they brought to Rabban Gamliel 2 large dates, udli shel mayim, and also a bucket of water. In other words, they brought him something to drink. And they said, Halum la sukkah. And they said, let's take it to the sukkah. They didn't want to eat it outside the sukkah. V'tanei Allah, and we learned about the story. Lo mipnei she'alacha kach, not because that's the halacha that you have to eat it in the sukkah. Ela sheratzu lachmir al atzman, but because they wanted to be stringent. In other words, normally you don't have to bring dates into the sukkah. Normally, to taste a tavshil, just to taste a little bit, you wouldn't have to go to the sukkah, but they wanted to go to the sukkah. And yet, when they gave to Rabbi Tzadok food that was less than kabetza, in other words, it was less than an egg, he would eat it. Nitalo b'mapa, he held it with a piece of napkin, he held it with a fabric, he didn't touch it directly, so he didn't have to do nitilat yadayim, and and he ate it outside the sukkah, and he didn't say a bracha afterwards. So in other words, Rabbi Tzadok followed ikar hadin. He wasn't so strict. It's trying to show you, even these great chachamim, not everybody was so strict. So he wasn't so strict, right? They would give him less than a kabetza of food, and he knew that technically, according to halacha, you don't have to eat it in the sukkah. So and technically, according to halacha, you don't need to wash netilat yadayim. So he held it with a napkin and he ate it outside the sukkah. Unlike Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai and Rabban Gamliel, who even though they had things that didn't necessitate a sukkah, they still went to the sukkah. Now, what's the relevance of this to our discussion here? Kabetza ba'e sukkah. The implication is that a kabetza requires a sukkah. Because what does it say about Rabbi Tzadok? When he ate less than a kabetza, less than an egg's volume of food, that's when he ate outside the sukkah. If it had been more than an egg's volume of food, he would have had to eat it in the sukkah. And what did you tell me? You told me that the kotevet, the date, is larger than an egg. But Rabban Gamliel had 2 kotavot. He had 2 dates, which means he had more than a kabetza. You're telling me he had more than an egg's worth? Definitely, because if 1 date is more than an egg's worth, definitely 2 dates is. So how could Rabban Gamliel eat it outside the sukkah? You're telling me that if you eat a kabetza of food, it has to be inside the sukkah, and you're telling me that a date is the same size as an egg, or it's larger. So how could he not eat it in the sukkah? So the Gemara, so the ve'is al kadatach kotevet agasash amru yitera mikabetza hashta shte kotavot below garinan lo havu kabetza. So the Gemara asks, if you're going to tell me that a large date that we said is larger than an egg, could it be that that you have a situation that shtei kotavot below garinan lo havu kabetza vekotevet gasav v'garinata mi ave yitera mikabetza yitera mikabetza? Is it possible that you're telling me that Rabban Gamliel had these 2 dates, and let's say they didn't include their pit, they were pitted dates, 2 pitted dates he was able to eat outside the sukkah? Because why? Because it must be less than an egg size, right? And you're telling me that 1 date with a pit is going to be larger than an egg? So 2 whole dates is not larger than an egg. It's not even the size of an egg. But a date with a pit inside is larger than an egg? That doesn't seem to make any logical sense, right? So therefore the Gemara answers, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, yes, shetei kotavot below garinatan lo havu kabetza. 2 dates that are pitted, if you put them together, they're not going to be the volume of an egg. But kotevet agasav garinata, but a large date and its pit, have yetera mikabetza, it will indeed be larger than an egg. In other words, the pit really adds a lot to the volume, is what he's saying. It adds a lot to the volume. Amar Rav Papa said, Hainu da amra in ashe. This is why people say, Terei kabed tmarei. If you have 2 kav of tmarim, chad kavad de kashiyata v'sariach, you're going to have an entire kav of pits plus more. In other words, if you have, let's put it in our terms, if you have 100 grams of dates, you're going to have 50 grams plus of pits. Okay, so in other words, what is it saying? In one date, okay, in a single date, more than 50% of the volume is going to be from the pit. Because it's saying if you have 2 kav of dates, you're going to have more than 1 kav of it is going to be from the pits. Okay, that's what Rashi says on the side here. V'sariach means extra. Okay, so in other words, if you have so when you have the large date that has the pit inside, let's say the large date is I'm just making up the size. It's 5 grams. Okay, or it's 10 grams, so that pit inside is another 6 grams. That's what it's saying, right? It's going to be it's going to add to the size. That's what they're saying so far. Hold on. But in other words, there's a lot of pits. Okay, the pit adds a lot. That's what it's saying. So therefore, you could have 2 pitted dates. Each one is 5 grams each. It's only going to be 10. But if you have a 5-gram date and its pit, you could have 11 grams. Right? That's what the Gemara is saying. So really it could be that 2 dates together will be less than a kabetza. But 1 date with its pit could be even more than a kabetza, because the pit adds more than 50% to the volume. That's what Rav Papa is saying. Now, Rava says, no, it's not true. The reason why they didn't have to go into the sukkah with these dates is a different reason. It's because it's fruit. Fruit you don't have to eat in the sukkah. Why did Rabban Gamliel have 2 kotavot? He had 2 dates and he didn't go into the sukkah. Even if he had more than a kabetza, it doesn't matter. Yes, the 2 pitted dates were larger than an egg. Yes, but the only thing is, you don't need to eat dates in the sukkah. You only need to eat bread in the sukkah. So that's why he didn't go. You don't have to say that the pit is more than 50%, it adds more than 50% of volume to the date. The main point here is that he didn't have to bring it because it was fruit. They raised another objection. Rabbi said, when we used to learn Torah by Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua, they brought us figs and grapes, and we ate them. We ate them as an achilat arai. We ate them as a snack outside the sukkah. So what does that mean? Achilat arayin. The implication is that why did they eat them as an achilat aray outside the sukkah? Because it was a snack. But achilat keva lo. But let's say a person is having a lot of fruit. It's not just a snack; it's a meal. They're having a lot of fruit. So that would imply that what? You need to go to the sukkah. So Rabban Gamliel was having 2 large dates, and it was more than a kabetza. He should go to the sukkah then. Gemara answers, no. What they meant to say was, we ate them like a snack outside the sukkah, meaning no matter how much we had, it's still a snack. Because fruit is fruit. Fruit is not bread. Fruit is not a meal. So therefore, anytime you're eating fruit, no matter how much it is, it's not going to be considered a meal, and we can't infer how much Rabban Gamliel ate. Were those 2 dates more than a bitzah, less than a bitzah? We could say they were more than a bitzah. It doesn't matter that it was more than a bitzah size. Why? Because it was fruit. Alternatively, achalnu achilat keva. Alternatively, maybe the story was that they ate achilat keva, they ate a lot of fruit, and we ate it together with bread, but we only had a little bit of bread, so we didn't have to go into the sukkah. That's why they mentioned achilat aray, not because of the fruit. The fruit, it doesn't matter if you're eating it as a snack or it's your meal. You can eat as much fruit as you want outside the sukkah, but it's saying, since we ate even though we ate a little bit of bread with it, since it was only achilat aray, a tiny taste of bread, we didn't have to go to the sukkah. But the same point, that fruit doesn't necessitate a sukkah. So we can't prove that, Rabban Gamliel's 2 dates must have been less than the size of a betzah. Maybe it was more. It doesn't matter. So now the Gemara goes on and says, Lema misayeh alei. Maybe this supports what we learned in the Mishnah Sukkah. It talks about in Masechet Sukkah that there's a machloket in the Mishnah that according to Rabbi Eliezer, one must have 14 seudot on Sukkot. Every night and every day he has to have a seudah. Every night and every day. So what happens if he lacks one of those, he misses one of those meals? How can he make up for it? So the Gemara says, in Masechet Sukkot says, if he completed, in other words, if he wanted to finish that last meal with minei targima, what he did was he added something to his final meal in the sukkah to make up for one of the meals that he missed. And what did he add? He added minei targima, which Rashi says is liftan, things that you eat on the bread. Things that you eat with the bread, okay? Things that you add to the bread. So, what does that mean? So, ve'isal kadatach pere ba'usuka litne perot. And if you're going to tell me that fruit requires a sukkah, it should say that you should complete the meal with fruit. Why doesn't it say fruit? Oh, you see a proof that, again, fruit doesn't require a sukkah. But the Gemara answers, no, my minei targima. We can't prove it from here because maybe minei targima is perot. Or ve'ibait ema be'atra de la shechichi pere. Maybe it's talking about a place where there are no fruits available. So, in other words, we can't prove from the fact that you complete your meal, you make up for your 14 meals that you missed using minei targima. First of all, minei targima might mean fruit, in which case maybe fruit does require a sukkah. On the other hand, maybe it doesn't mean fruit. Maybe it means other condiments, but it's in a place where you couldn't find any fruit. That's all. But you can't prove definitively that fruit doesn't require a sukkah from this. Okay? Rav Zavid says, Kotevet agasa shamru chasera mikabetza. That all this that we've been trying to figure out whether a large date is bigger than an egg, smaller than an egg, it's actually less than an egg. It's less than an egg. Okay? So just to leave off, what we left that with was they can't prove anything. We can't prove that fruit doesn't require a sukkah. Maybe it does. We can't prove that the date is bigger or isn't bigger than an egg. We can't figure it out from any of those cases. So now Rav Zavid comes with a different opinion and says it's actually smaller. Ditznan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Bet Shammai Omrim, this is from Masechet Betzah, Seor b'kazayit, Hametz b'chechotevet. And what it's talking about there is how much chametz do you have to own in your property, on your property, for it to constitute a violation of owning chametz. Okay? Beit Hillel says zev zeh bechazayit, they're both a kazayit. Beit Shammai says seor bechazayit, that when it comes to seor is sourdough. Okay? It's a much more powerful a type of substance than regular chametz. It's not even edible. It's a starter dough. There's so much chimutz, there's so much what?
Close to the bread.
Right, it's so intense in the chimutz, it's so leavened that you put it in other bread to cause it to rise. Okay, That's the seor. So seor, he says, is bechazait. Chametz, bechechotevet. For chametz you need kotevet. You need a date size. Now, he's trying to prove, remember, Rav Zavid wants to prove that kotevet is less than an egg. We asked the following question: what did Beit Shammai? What was his reasoning for making a different measurement and saying if you own even a kazayit, even an olive's worth of the sourdough, the intensely leavened dough, that you are liable, but for chametz you have to have a date size. What's the reason? Because nichtov rachmana chametz v'lo ba'is saor. Because the Torah could have simply written chametz, not to own chametz. It didn't need to write that you can't own seor. It's why does it need both? And I would have known if I'm not allowed to own even an olive's worth of chametz, where chametz is a less intense leavening, right? It's not as leavened as seor. So then seor shechayim motzo kasher lo kol sheken. So then certainly seor is going to be prohibited even to own a kazayit. In other words, if the Torah only told me chametz, I would know for sure that seor would be included. However, so then midpalginu rahmana, from the fact that the Torah gives us two commandments: don't own seor and don't own chametz. So I have both. What does that mean? Lo kishiur. So that means lo kishiuro shel seor shel zeh seor bakazayit v'chametz bekikotevet. In other words, to teach you that. What says limdal lecha? It shouldn't say lecha. Shiro shel zeh lo k'shiro shel zeh. That the measurement of one is not like the measurement of another. Seor bekazayit, chametz bekikotevet. In other words, it's telling you, by telling you both, it teaches you that the measurement is different. If it told you just chametz, that would mean just like you're not allowed to own a kazayit of chametz, you're not allowed to own a kazayit of seor. We would have known that already. We would have known that you can't own seor either. But since it tells you both, it means the measurement is not the same. Chametz, you have to own a kotevet. Seor, you have to own even a kazayit of ownership is going to make you liable for owning chametz on Pesach. So therefore, if you're going to tell me that kotevet is larger than an egg, now what is the whole point of Beit Shammai? They're looking for the next shiur higher than kazait. Right? What are they saying? They're saying, okay, it's not going to be the measurement of seor, it's going to be the next one up. It's going to be the next larger. So what's the next larger? If the next larger is kotevet, that means kotevet is less than betzah. Because if date, if betzah is less than date, then that means that betzah is going to be, they should have chosen betzah. So it must be that what? The litni kabetzah. Why didn't they teach kabetzah? So and if they're even the same, he should have said kabetzah because it's a more common measurement. Why didn't he say kabetzah? In other words, the point here is that Beit Shammai is trying to say that we bump up chametz one shiur, one measurement. We say, okay, it's not going to be as strict as seor. Seor is more strict because it's more leavened. It's more leavened. So chametz is going to be one step up. One step more lenient, that you have to own even more in order to violate the commandment. How much do you need to own? A date size. Why doesn't it say a betzah size? If a betzah is smaller than a date, why doesn't it say a betzah? Or if a betzah and a date are the same size, why doesn't it pick a betzah? Because that's a more common measurement anyway. Why is he picking a date? Obviously a date must be smaller than a betzah. So it goes like this. Kazayit, date, right? Olive, date, egg. That's the order. So therefore we must say that a date is smaller than kabetzah. So the order is olive, date, egg. Okay? Mimai. But how do you know that that's true? Maybe we can disprove that as well. Dilma le'olami malach kotevet hagasa she'amru yetera mikabetzah hastama kabetzah. We could argue the opposite. We could say that when we're talking in the Mishnah, what did we say? Kotevet hagasa, the large date. The large date is what we said is bigger than a betzah. So if you're counting that way, you would say kazayit, kabetzah, right? Olive size, egg size, large date size. But here we're not talking about large date. We're talking about regular date. Regular date could be less than a kabetzah, or it even could be the same as a kabetzah. And the Gemara says, and even if you say it's the same, maybe the Beit Shammai decided to pick one of the two. and decided to pick date for whatever reason. Okay, so we can't prove it from there either. Ela me'acha, but we're going to learn it from here. Ad kama mizamenin. How much do you have to eat of bread in order to make a zimun? In other words, in order to say birkat hamazon. Ad kazayit. Divrei Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says if you eat even a kazayit, even an olive's worth of bread, you have to say birkat hamazon. Rabbi Yehuda omer ad kabetza. And Rabbi Yehuda says, and he needs to eat an egg's worth. What do they argue about? Rabbi Meir savar. Rabbi Meir holds ve'achalta zo achila. When it says you should eat, that means eating requires a blessing. V'savata, and it says you should be full, you should be satisfied. Zo shetiya. Okay, that means drinking. V'achila b'kazayit, and we know that eating is a kazayit. In other words, eating a kazayit, eating an olive's worth, is enough to require birkat hamazon. When it says v'savata, it means you should also drink with your meal and other things, but it's not telling you about the eating. The eating itself, kazayit is enough. However, Rabbi Yehuda savar, Rabbi Yehuda says, v'achalta v'savata, achila sheyesh ba siviyah. Eating that involves satisfaction. Ve'ezezeh kabetza. This is a kabetza. This is an egg's worth. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda is saying, by telling you not just v'achalta, but v'achalta v'savata, it means it's not enough just to eat an olive's worth of food. It has to be an amount that's going to make you full. And what's going to make you full? Kabetza. Therefore, you have to have at least kabetza to say birkat hamazon. Now we come to our issue. V'i salkadatach. If you're going to say kotevet hagasa shamru yitera mi kabetza, that the large date is actually larger than kabetza, so then hashta kabetza sevu'ei misabe'a data lo miyatva. Now wait a second. If you're going to tell me that the large date is larger than an egg, you're telling me that an egg is achila sheyesh ba siviyah. That is an eating that satisfies a person. Right? That's what Rabbi Yehuda says. Eating a kabetza satisfies a person. So you're telling me it satisfies a person, but data lo miyatva? It doesn't give them any psychological comfort. And what is the rule on Yom Kippur? We're measuring the amount of food that gives a person a psychological, an emotion, a feeling of comfort. So it takes away inui, it takes away the suffering. So you're telling me that he can eat, you're telling me that the order is an olive, an egg, a date. So you're telling me that an egg is sviyah, is satisfaction. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you need to eat an egg's worth of bread in order to say birkat hamazon, but you're still not going to violate Yom Kippur until you eat a kotevet, which is even bigger than an egg. How could that be? You had enough to say birkat hamazon, but you didn't violate Yom Kippur. That doesn't make any sense. Right? That doesn't make any sense. So therefore, El alav shemamina kotevet agasa shamru pachot mikabetza kabetza misabe'a kechotevet miatva date. Rather, we must conclude. It's only logical to conclude that the kotevet hagasa, even the large date, is smaller than an egg, which means that when you eat a kazayit, so we have three standards. Eating a kazayit is considered what we call ma'aseh achila. It's considered an eating, but it's not an eating that gives a person psychological comfort, that makes them feel better. For that you need the amount of a date, but that's still not enough for siviyah. It's still not enough for a person to feel satisfied that they would say birkat hamazon according to Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore they would need to eat a kabetza, they would need to eat up to an egg's volume in order to say birkat hamazon according to Rabbi Yehuda, because only then do we say that the person is satisfied. So these are the three levels of measuring eating that we have. Kazayit, olive is the smallest, date is the middle, and kabetza is the largest.